Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome one of my favorite people in the Dallas Cowboys community. I've had the honor of being able to work with him with the Cowboys Collective. Jon, what I like to call the Machota, is gracing the platform today on Attack on Cowboys as we discuss some Dallas Cowboys rumblings, some of the things that he thinks are going to happen. And keep in mind, this is all just, we're just talking. We ain't breaking news here. He's not talking about anything definitive. We're just talking and just kind of getting his insights from the eyes of an insider, from the shoes of an insider, and someone that's around the organization in closer proximity than we are, right? Thank you, Jon, for making time to come and join us today, brother.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Appreciate you having me on.
So I'm gonna go ahead and get it started with something light real quick. I gotta know. It's February 17th now. I gotta know what a Machota Valentine's Day looks like. What did you do for Valentine's Day?
Pretty lame the last few years. I'll say that right now. Not much. Hung out. Okay. I pretty much live a pretty boring life, which I have the perfect life right now to cover a team that was really good. I can tell you that right now. I've eliminated most distractions in my life, and then most of my closest friends and family all live in Michigan, and right. So I'm very work driven. But yeah, no, nothing exciting. What about you?
Hey man. Hey, look, all I can say is I'm on IR right now. I'm on 30-day IR. I have a Valentine's Day injury.
Okay.
I got that Dak Prescott injury. I got this. I might have tore a hammy off the bone, Jon. I'm not sure, man. I might have tore a hammy off the bone, but yeah, it was good for me. It was good for me at least for that night. The next day, maybe not so much. But no, man. Speaking of vibes and Valentine's Day feelings, how do you think the vibes are just around the organization? Do you feel like the hiring of Schottenheimer is truly going to inject just new life into the organization? Do you feel like the energy shifting at all? And then I kind of want to get into kind of like the structure, just the structure from your eyes as far as someone that's closer to the organization, as far as like who's really leading, man? Because there's a lot of he's the leader, and leading, the word leading's been tossed around a lot. Just from your eyes, like who do you really see guys following in that organization?
So with the thing with Schottenheimer, I'll say this. I think that it's a good sign when you see that who the guys are that are on the coaching staff, because it's not a lot of holdovers. It looks like it's at least the way that you'd want to build a coaching staff, which was probably normal for most teams. But with the Cowboys, there's always seems to be some type of, behind the scenes type, Jerry wanted this guy on the staff type thing. And with this staff, it doesn't really seem that way. It seems like they allowed Brian Schottenheimer to do his thing. And so I think that's a good sign. And I think that will bring some new energy with some of these new coaches into the building and that. So, yeah, that's a good thing. And I think that was needed because like we had talked about a couple times in the Cowboys Collective, I just felt like things were getting stale, particularly on offense. And so even if McCarthy was to come back, I thought that they needed to make some changes on offense that weren't just a little tweak here or there. And so it's tough to say right now exactly what they'll be because, if they use a first-round pick on a running back like Ashton Genty, then that's going to have significant impact on things that they do in the run game that maybe they don't do if they don't get a running back until the second or third round. So what they've done up to this point, I think if you're a Cowboys fan, you should feel pretty good about it. And one of the other moves, even though I do think that Jason Witten has a chance to be a good coach, I think that it's a good sign for anybody that did believe that, well, then Jerry's just going to call his shots and all this stuff. I think if you thought that, then Jason Witten would be somewhere on this staff, and he's obviously not. Mm-hmm. And so I think that takes away a little bit of the initial hire of Schottenheimer. You just heard so many people want to go right to using the word puppet, and that's why Jerry hired him, and he's just going to force Witten on him, and then eventually Witten replacement. And so we're not seeing that. And so I think what the Cowboys are saying about it being different but bringing some continuity, I think is all true. But we won't know definitively until we see them get on the field and at least get to some mini camp practices and OTAs.
Right. So obviously with Schottenheimer, there's going to be just kind of a new pecking order in place, because I felt like with McCarthy, the whole new captain every week thing, and just it felt chaotic. It felt like the locker room's chaotic. It felt like it was just a chaotic workplace as far as, sometimes the inmates might have been running the asylum a little bit. I want to talk about just the vibes in the organ. Like who do you really feel like the organization, the people within the organization, who do you feel like they're naturally gravitating towards? Like who's really leading in the organization? Like, who's the real leader? Not the lip service stuff, even with Dak. Like, the whole, oh, he's a great leader. Like, who do you really feel the organization is behind?
Well, even if you didn't ever talk to Dak or know anything about him, he has to be on the top because he's the highest paid player in the NFL. Like,
Right.
the money talks. I mean, it
Right.
doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter if a guy's a good leader, bad leader, winner, not somebody that chokes in the playoffs, somebody that puts up big stats, or somebody that, is just a big mouth that you're kind of whatever. When you give that person that type of a contract, that's one of your leaders, no matter what he does. No matter if he's a great leader or not, he's one of your leaders now because he's not going anywhere. And if you're a guy on that team, you have to fall in line. So I think it's Dak still, and then I think Micah takes on even more of a role now that he's put together 3 big time seasons, and then it doesn't look like DeMarcus Lawrence will be back. And so if you don't have Lawrence, he was always the one that kind of was carrying that torch there just because of his production and longevity. So I just think that Micah clearly steps into that role of being that guy on the defense. But on offense, it hasn't changed for me. It's still Dak Prescott. I mean, I don't think that will change with anything they do in free agency or in the draft. I think and I also think, they kind of go as how Dak goes. And so obviously Schottenheimer has to be, a voice, and whether fans want to hear it or not, just because of who Jerry is and his reputation, he's always going to be that way. Guys are always going to fall in line and listen to him and things like that because he's Jerry Jones. I mean, not just the owner of the team, but just who he is as a person. So I don't think it's changed very much, and that's why I've said several times over the last probably, year really, that you can't really do a rebuild when you're going to pay CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott, and Micah Parsons. That's not a rebuild. Your 3 key pillars are all getting big time contracts. They're going to be around for the next 4 or 5 years. So you're not really rebuilding. You can retool some things around it, but you can't do a full.
Were we having an identity crisis? Do you feel like there was any type of fatigue? Because I keep replaying what DeMarcus Lawrence said at the end of last season, as far as guys in the locker room were emotionally drained. Guys were tired. And he said, I think the noise got to him, right?
Yeah.
And I'm looking at how things are playing out and now listening to some of the things that Micah is saying as far as like he's glad to kind of reset and have a chance for the younger guys to kind of take over and do it the younger guys' way. And it almost sounds like, and looking at it now and just kind of looking at some of the friction that sometimes was visible on the sideline between DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah, was there a power struggle? Was there like a kind of like a struggle of Micah trying to take over, but DeMarcus Lawrence still being such a strong personality and presence where it was just like a natural struggle?
So I've never been told that, but I couldn't rule that out. I could see that being a possibility for sure. My thing is that it is a young man's league, and anytime stuff is going for a while and it starts getting a little bit stale, it always turns towards guys want to go to the younger, new, whatever's. We're done with the old way, and that's gone on for several generations of Dallas Cowboys football. I mean, I think that was a big push in 2016 because it wasn't anymore 16 the Romo, Witten, whatever. It was turned over right away to where no, this is the Dak Zeke show where you're like, these guys are the ones that are carrying it, and they also had the personalities and everything like that. And when you're winning all those games in a row, people have to buy in, whether you think that Zeke's a great leader or you think he's, doing stuff off the field that he shouldn't be doing. The way he's playing on the field, he's a leader, So there was that shift at that time. And hey, maybe that is what was needed right now, is that stuff was starting to get a little stale because it was, the 3 12-win seasons, but there's no playoff wins. And then just the way that this season started out just seemed like it was just rolling right off of that Packers loss, particularly at home, where you're just like, you can't even put a finger on it. I don't even know that anybody in the organization can put a finger on still to this day exactly why the train went off the tracks as bad as it did in that Green Bay game and how that carried over into the season the way it did. And to be honest with you, it probably didn't help that they waited forever to sign Dak and CD. You get those contracts done before training camp. Maybe there's a little bit more of a different vibe. The way that they waited till right at the end like that, I don't know if that was the best thing. There's just so many different things that you can point to. I mean, heck, you can even point to the fact that like so many people talk about like Jerry like undermining the coaching staff and doing things like that. That's a great argument to make. I can argue right back with you. This past season is about as non-controversial as Jerry's been.
Yeah.
Whether we talk about 105.3 The Fan, Tuesday morning interviews, not giving up injury stuff like he normally did, like not really doing anything, like really critical of Mike. And there was plenty of time during the season. He always backed Mike throughout all those interviews and stuff like that. Like I did not think he brought a ton of distractions during the season the way that people normally do. I thought that he kind of took a step back, like, hey, this is Mike's final year of his contract. I'm not going to do anything to get in the way, you know. Now, again, I'm talking by Jerry standards because, of course,
obviously, because Jerry's going to give you.
If you're a
some
fan
headlines.
of another team, I'm going to tell you this right now. One of the best things that could happen, it wouldn't be great for my job, but it's fine. I would understand it. One of the best things that could happen for the Cowboys is obviously Jerry to step down and hire a GM. But number two would be, what if Jerry said he's not talking all season long? I mean, that was like a big thing in 2011 during that playoff run that the Mavericks had, that Mark Cuban used to be a guy that would talk all the time before games, and he didn't talk at all during that playoffs. And then they went and they won the championship and went on a hell of a run. And so I've always thought about that, but that will never happen with Jerry. You got a chance of that happening with Steven. There's no chance of that happening with Jerry.
Interesting. Okay. Very, very interesting. So we know Jerry's a guy that's stuck in his ways. We're talking about vibes. And do you think that with everything that's happened with the Eagles and the Super Bowl parade and just everything, do you get a sense that they are kind of ready to kind of pay the piper a little bit and be like, all right, we got to do something a little bit differently? Is there really that kind of energy kind of being put into this?
So I will know a lot more in 2 weeks after the combine, because that's the best time to be around Jerry and Steven, on and off the record, and other people in the organization. I'll have a way better feel then. But as I sit here today, just because naturally, like this time of year, we don't have the same amount of access as we normally do. As I sit here today, I don't. I think that that's what they should be doing, and I think that people are hopeful that that's what happens, because it isn't just this year's Eagles team. It's what the Eagles have done the last 8 years, the way that they've had teams that aren't even like this team, and they broke it down and then built it back up again, and they've been to 3 Super Bowls in these 8 years while you haven't been to one NFC championship game. So it's a culmination of all of that should be the thing that you should be thinking about. It shouldn't be the one-off of just like, oh, well, the Eagles just got hot at the right time. No, they've been doing this, building this really for 8 years now. Paying Wentz didn't work out. We're able to get out of that, That's the thing. That's the thing
hurt me.
That's the thing that, sorry, that's the thing about the Eagles too, that's always interesting to bring up too, is that, Jerry will talk about how, with whether you talk about the end of the Romo deal or even on this last DAC contract, how well, there's money being carried over, this dead money that they got to carry over because they pushed it down the road and everything like that. I mean, the Eagles had, I think, like at least 15 million in dead on Jason Kelce, who obviously wasn't on the team, and then on Fletcher Cox. So it's not like their roster was perfect. They gave a pretty big contract to Bryce Huff, their pass rusher, who didn't even play in the Super Bowl. Like, it's not like they hit on everything, but they're always trying.
But they kept trying. They kept trying. They kept throwing those darts.
Thing. You would think if even if you're not a fan of the Cowboys, you're just like an NFL fan, you'd be like, man, that Eagles run and all that, that's got to really, and then the way the season went, that's got to really piss off Jerry. Like, I could see him being real active this offseason. And you would think that should happen. But I'm trying not to just look at it in a 1 year or a 3-4 week sample size. I'm going off of what I've seen the last decade, and the last decade tells me that I wouldn't be banking on any like huge moves being made, And if they do, great, be happy about it. But as I sit here today, I don't see a major change in the way that they do business.
I just feel like there's going to be some natural turnover, like I said before, but just because of the coaching staff changes, and obviously coaches want guys to kind of fit what they do a little bit better, and they already have 20-plus guys that are going to be restricted free agents, unrestricted free agents, voided contracts, whatever it may be. So you can already have some room to kind of switch some pieces out. But I'm with you. As of right now, I'm with you. Unless we hear something that's like a real nugget at the combine when you actually get a chance to talk to those guys, or when y'all get a chance to actually start talking to some of these coaches, right? And they may say some things as it pertains to guys that they need or the type of guys they need, then we'll have a better idea as to how they're kind of going to want to craft this roster. But yeah, right now, it's hard to be happy besides anything except for the coaching staff. I think coaching staff-wise, I think this is probably one of the better coaching staffs they put together. You touched on it a little bit earlier. And is there a sense that these aren't guys that Schotty just knew, right? He kind of just looked for guys that excelled at their positions.
Yeah, because I think if it was guys he just knew, I don't think it would have taken as long to put the staff together. And then the other thing is, too, is like, it's not even just about the staff. It's about, like, when you look at the final list that when it comes out, it's like you look at some of these different things, because like I told you right before we started recording, so the coordinators and all these assistants are going to be made available Tuesday, so tomorrow at the Star. And so what they'll do is like for probably about 15, 20 minutes, all the offensive coaches will be out there, 15, 20 minutes, then it's the defensive. So you got to kind of move around. So I'm like, I've been looking at the staff like, okay, my time is going to be limited. Who do I really need to talk to? But one of the things I'm fascinated by is just like how, like there's just some of these names of some of these positions, like Ryan Fetter, who was like he was helped out on the offense last year, but like now he's a game management coordinator, and then they bring in Ken Dorsey as a pass game specialist. You know, there's just like some roles on here. And then even on the secondary side, like they have a coach that's a secondary, but for corners, and then they have a secondary for nickels.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Like, yeah, so it's like there's just some like different roles there that and then there's Andre Curtis, who's the defensive pass game coordinator and safeties coach. So there's a little bit of that I'm trying to get like ironed out. Like, so what are all these different roles? And that seems like that's something that Schottenheimer would want. So the one thing I'll say about him,
more concentrated, more focused.
That's what it's probably that, but it's also one of those things when you've been an assistant for 25 years, you're going to have all these different plans in your head. Actually, I take that back. It's not even about the 25 years as an assistant. That's part of it. But the other part is that your dad's Marty Schottenheimer. So there's a part of you that thinks one day I'm going to get a chance to be head coach. Maybe it's the Dallas Cowboys, but hey, maybe it's the Jets, or hey, maybe it's the University of Miami. But at one point, I'm going to get a chance to be a head coach. So along the way, I'm sure he's gathering things that he's like, hey, when I get my shot, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to have these guys. I'm going to set up my coaching staff like that. And the way that it doesn't look just like Cowboys coaching staffs have been in the past, I think that's a good sign that he's getting his say. You know, he's getting his ability to do what he wants to do. And I also think when I see that, and then how long it took to build the coaching staff, that's also what makes me think that's why there was that second day of an interview with Schottenheimer. Remember, they interviewed him the first day, and then he came back the next day, and it was this long interview. Jerry and Steven probably, that he wasn't their number one guy, I bet you what it was that they wanted to really hear everything, and then they were really impressed by it. And they're like, let's do this another day, you know, come back tomorrow. And then went through all this, and he was probably so detailed on all these things that's probably what really ultimately won them over.
Was Jerry capping when he said other coaches was calling about the job? Because you remember saying other guys are. Who would have been calling, John?
I'll say this. That's like me saying I'm a basketball player. Yeah, I played in high school. I'm 43 now. Like, I'm not really a basketball player. So when I say things like that, like when you just say it out in the open, then that leaves speculation for anything. But if I tell you that, like, yeah, the coach that we're calling were like Rex Ryan, like, is anybody going, oh my God, I can't believe we missed out on Rex? You know what I'm saying? Like, or somebody along those lines, you know? When you hear it, you're thinking like, oh, I wonder if that's Bill Belichick, or if that was, you know, I'm trying to think of another, like even a name like we had talked about on the Cowboys Collective, like a John Gruden or something. People would be interested by that because it's somebody that's won a Super Bowl as a head coach. I don't get the sense that it was anybody on like that.
It was Ron Rivera. I know what it was.
Well, yeah, that's exactly right.
I know who it was.
That's a great one too. I could. None of that would surprise me either. Really, any of these head coaches that have been in the interview cycle that didn't get a job probably were like, you know, and deservedly so. I mean, if I was trying to get a head coaching job and all the other jobs were taken, you do what you got to do.
What was your impression of Kellen? Did you see his? I'm surely you watched his introductory press conference and everything. Like, what were your impressions of him?
I'm interested to see how he is as a head coach, just because that doesn't just seem like he doesn't seem like a natural like head coach. Now
he doesn't.
So his dad was his coach in high school, and when he I'm trying to think what year it was. It might have been 15. Yeah, 15 when Romo got hurt. He got to play a little bit, and so that season was real ugly, just like this one was. So we were just looking for any storyline. So I remember writing like a pretty long feature on him and interviewed like his dad.
He said we're just looking for any storyline.
Oh yeah, but what it was is like we were like, am I really going to do this deep dive on this backup quarterback that Romo's coming back next year and whatever? It's going to be Kellen's job. But the reason why I mentioned it is because like it was one of those where like the more people you talk to, the more interesting it got. And like in talking to his dad and then talking to like his college roommate, like he is one of the few people that when they were younger, they were always drawing up plays because they thought one day that they'll be a coach. And that isn't really common. That's like a young kid being like, and this is taken to a little bit of an extreme, but it's almost like how many young kids out there right now are just like, man, Dad, when I grow up, I want to be an NBA referee. Like, it's great money.
Hey, you'd be surprised.
And you can do it for 30, 40 years and make great money, but no one's thinking about that now. You think about that after you didn't make it in the NBA or you didn't make it in college. Then you're like, well, how can I stay around basketball? Then you might get into officiating or something like that. But like,
being a professional ball boy.
Yeah, kids aren't thinking about being coaches and stuff like that when they're real young. But I guess Kellen always was. So I know that this has always been his thing. But the whole like press conference thing, and talking in front of the team and all that, that's going to be the biggest thing for me. That I'm fascinated to see how it goes. And that's where I think, because a lot of that, I think that's why New Orleans is a much better fit than, let's say, if he got Dallas, because there'd be a lot of stuff he'd have to deal with, Jerry Wise and things like that he'd brush it off, like kind of like Jason Garrett did, but I just don't know if that's something that is best for him to have his best success as a head coach. So yeah, I watched most of the press conference, but it reminded me exactly of his press conferences in Dallas as the OC. Like, he's just not a guy that he's not going to show like a huge personality and stuff like that, because that's just not in his DNA. And
I wasn't even looking for that. I see when I'm watching people's press conferences, this is anybody, I don't care if I'm watching the president or anything, I'm looking at body language. I'm looking at presence. I'm looking at how comfortable you are kind of commanding your space. You know what I'm saying? And being able to kind of command a room. And Kellen, as he stood there, he had a lot of like nervous tendencies. It was kind of like he was kind of uncomfortable in his zone, and you can tell he was just very unsure of himself. Yeah. And I'm just not sure how that's going to translate to trying to command a group of 50 large personality. Well, it's really more than that. You're talking coaches and everything, right? So
no, absolutely. But I will say, if you went back and watched, maybe not all of it, and it might not have been on the same level, but I don't think if you went back and watched all of Sirianni's, you thought that they'd ever sniff a Super Bowl with him as head coach. Like, it was not good. And then the other thing is too, is like, then you just fast forward into, if I told you on that day, like, oh no, and he's also going to be the guy that like is yelling at fans and stuff like that, and he's going to have guys that he has to have his assistants pulling him away from players on the side, and then like their best players going to be reading a book in the middle of like a big game and stuff like that. There's just all these things where you'd be like, well, this isn't going to work because of this isn't, and then here they are, and they had as dominant of a playoff run as anybody, as dominant of a Super Bowl as anybody's ever had. So there's just some of that stuff why it's tough to like really point to one thing or the other of why you think this thing's going to be successful or not, So that's the only reason with him. I mean,
unless Kellen has a Howie Roseman tucked in his pocket somewhere. I mean,
but the thing I was going to say,
because Mickey Loomis is
so, and that's the point I was going to get to, is I was going to say, I can't think of maybe in college basketball, but I can't think of anybody in the NFL that has won big because it was just because of like the coach. Like, I mean, when I think of like all the top coaches right now and stuff like that, like there's obviously some better than others, but for the most part, it's show me what their roster is, You give me that Nick Sirianni roster. Like, I love Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell's got a great roster. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's just certain things about.
Are you a Lions fan or a Cowboys fan?
I've never been a Cowboys fan. No.
Okay, what is your actual allegiance, like fan?
Yeah,
when you put your fan
when I grew up, my whole entire life, I've always been like a Lions fan. But getting into this business, it makes it hard to be the fan you used to be, because it's your busiest time of year, and the team that you're covering a lot of times is playing on days when that other team's playing. So I can't watch it as closely as I used to, Right. Where if I was covering like the NBA or something like that, it would be easier for me to keep up with them. So, but no, I still follow them. I was going to go home for the if they made the NFC Championship game, I was going to go to the game with some friends and that. But yeah, no, I was never a Cowboys fan, but I was always so I was born in '82, so I'm not a big believer in people being diehard sports fans at like 6, 7 years old. I just don't believe it, because I don't think that you're old enough to even know. But so like 9, 10 years old, that's right as I'm getting into like being in love, obsessed with sports. Like, I mean, it's the biggest thing still in my life. And that Cowboys run in the 90s was right in there. So they were always on TV, in Detroit. Like they were always, and they were larger than life, I remember, still to this day, my favorite book is that Boys Will Be Boys that Jeff Pearlman wrote. And it's like the whole background and like everything. It starts with like, the Michael Irvin stabbing a guy in the neck with the scissors at training camp, Everett McIver, I think it was. And
hey, Mike was tripping, man. Mike was tripping.
So
know what? I need to leave Micah alone, man. You're right. Because Michael Irvin was a wild boy.
Oh, yeah. No, for sure. And so, but I'm just saying, like, all of that stuff, like, I wasn't a Cowboys fan, but it was always on TV. And so if you like sports, you were watching like really at that time, it was Cowboys Niners. Like I remember even in, elementary school, middle school and stuff like that, like there was tons of kids that had in Michigan Niners or Cowboys stuff. Just like probably, I don't know, not so much now, but over the last probably 10 years, how like, or even around here, you'll see kids wearing Steph Curry jerseys and stuff like that. And we're nowhere near,
nowhere near them. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was always around it and I followed it, but no, I was never a Cowboys fan. No.
Okay. Hey, now you're getting them Cowboys checks though. You're getting them checks from covering the Cowboys. So hey, you gotta and when they're winning, I'm sure it's a lot better to cover them as well. Just
I'll be honest with you, it's just more fun. That's the thing.
Yeah.
I tell other writers that ask me about like, so what's it been like? How's the job and that's the biggest thing for me because I feel like I've experienced all the other stuff, like the arrests and all the other thing to like make you a well-rounded reporter. It's the deep playoff run and not only that, but it just like I've seen the glimpses of like just when it's rolling, whether it be 14 or 16, and even the previous 3 years when they had some really good teams, and you just were like, man, everything's setting up for them, man. How cool would it be to cover not just a Super Bowl run, but a Cowboy Super Bowl run that's ending like a 30-year-old drought, and with the fact of not to say that it still wouldn't be entertaining without Jerry. It's way more entertaining with him if they made that run because it would be this whole like. Jerry won these Super Bowls.
Could you imagine it?
And then he won, and then he waited 30 years, and then he was able to win them again, and just how out of control and how wild he would be about it.
Yes, so he would be out of control.
Layers. Yeah, there's so many more layers than there would be for other teams. Where like for the Eagles, like so you're a Cowboys fan, so it'll still be on your radar a little bit. But most fans of other teams, they're going to see that the Eagles won the Super Bowl. They're going to see everything from the parade, and that's it. And then maybe they'll get some memories of it once the draft comes. If the Cowboys win a Super Bowl, you're being inundated with that stuff every day, all the way through the combine to the draft. Like you're not going to even really have an offseason, and then it's going to be can they go back to back? It's the Dallas Cowboys, all this stuff. It's just there's just different levels to that, and that's the one thing that I've always said I would have loved. I'd love to see what that's like and just be a part of that because again, I've seen on very small levels. But nothing to like, man, if they were to get back to the NFC Championship game and win and then go to a Super Bowl and just that 2 weeks leading up to the Super Bowl, how crazy it would be, whatever city that they were in. Here's the other part too, I always tell people, it's how many fans would come out of the woodwork that have been hiding for like the last 5, 10, 15 years that would be like,
my goodness.
That they've just been waiting to like, I got Cowboy stuff and all that, but I don't want to really put it on right now. But then they get in the Super Bowl and just all these people are coming out where you're just like a great example is this year's Super Bowl.
Fake fans, like CD said, Eagles fans are more passionate.
But also Philadelphia has given them more to cheer for. Like, were they that passionate 15 years ago? They're passionate fans. Don't get me wrong, but like you go to 3 Super Bowls in 8 years. I don't care if that's the Jags. You're going to have a passionate fan base because you're going to think that hey, we're always in the fight. And then having a guy like Howie keeps them in the fight. It keeps every season interesting to where you're like, hey, we're making moves. We're trying to go for this thing where. If you have another offseason like that in Dallas, it's just so disappointing because you're like, now's the time. Like, what are you doing? Yeah.
Now that's true. It's just to me also though, like there's certain fan base like the Bills. The Bills haven't given that fan base anything to be passionate about, and that's one of the best fan bases in all the sports.
It is, but they don't have Jerry Jones, so they don't have that ownership person that to piss you off.
The hill. Yeah, that's playing the hill. Yeah, playing the role of the hill.
And then the other thing is that. The Bills, it's a lot closer. The Bills to me are a lot closer to like LSU football, where I'm a big college football fan, and it's like LSU I think has one of the best fan bases in sports. But I'm from Michigan, and so I'm like, well, yeah. What do you think the University of Michigan fan base would be like if you took away Michigan State, the Detroit Pistons, the Detroit Red Wings, the Detroit Tigers? It's like everybody's going to be rooting for that one thing because that's the thing that you have, And if you're in Buffalo. And you're living in upstate New York and it's cold all the time. What else are you going to be? You're obviously going to be passionate. That's a good point. That's your baby. Whereas in Dallas, there's so many things. And then the Cowboys fans a lot of times are the Lakers, Knicks, or not Lakers, Knicks, but Lakers. Yankees.
Hey man, we ain't front. Hold on, don't do us like that, John. We ain't front runners like that, man.
Yeah, but there's a lot of.
There's a lot of them. But
I don't think.
I hate it.
Oh, I'll give you the most basic example. Like he's kind of shied away from it. But that's because the wins haven't been there. But that 100% is LeBron James.
Yeah,
absolutely, it's LeBron James.
Yeah.
Probably my all-time favorite actor, Denzel Washington, is Yankees, Lakers, Cowboys. There is a lot of that. And I noticed it during the Luka trade because I mean, my Twitter my base is all Cowboys. I don't really tweet about other things. And so if I did fire off a tweet, I'm like, oh yeah, he isn't going from like one Cowboys fan base to, I mean, there are a lot of Lakers fans that, that also root for the Cowboys,
Yeah.
I mean, because you got to look at it from the Lakers standpoint too, of if you're in LA and you've always been this Lakers fan or whatever, like you can't really be like, oh wow, you're not a Rams fan. Like,
Do you think Michael Parsons being traded would be like the same effect to the Luka trade? Do you think it would have
I think
the same
a lot of
impact?
it would depend on what they got back. If they got something like, if they got 2 ones and a player, like I think that it wouldn't be as bad. But if they traded Micah and they got back, well, first of all, it has to be somebody that's like at the back end of their prime, like Anthony Davis is. So it would have to be somebody like in their like, late 20s, early 30s. And then they only get back like, I don't know, like a first or something like that, where you're just looking at it, you're like, man, that's all they got. Like, that would be the only way I could see it being like that.
Yeah. Okay. So
I can't see that. To be honest with you, I can't see that happening though, because
I was about to say. So let's play a game. So you can't see that happening. Let's.
There's no way that if Jerry's one of those owners, like in Detroit, the Ilitch family owns the Tigers and the Red Wings. Like if Jerry owned the Cowboys and the Mavs, there is zero chance he's trading Luka Doncic. You know what I'm saying? Like that's just because that's not in his DNA.
Yeah.
So that's why I can't see that happening. But what were we gonna say though?
Okay, so if you were the GM of the Cowboys, we're going and kind of ended up with this, and you had the free agency and the draft, what would be the 3 to 5 moves that you would make that would put this team back into a winning position if Jon Machota the GM?
So I'll tell you one that I've been thinking about is I think the way that the momentum seems to be going, like Oso Odigizua could get priced crazy. And let's say he gets up into like the Aleem McNeil type, like $20 million a year or something like that. I honestly think I'd be more interested in spending that money on 2 defensive tackles, like maybe on like 1-year deals or something like that, like a veteran type guys. Because I like Osa a lot and I think he's a really good player, but I think they need more help than just 1 D tackle. I think they need multiple D tackles. I've thought that their defensive tackle position has been one of their weaknesses for pretty much the entire time I've covered it, because I got in at the very end of Jay Ratliff's career.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
There's been some.
He was our last actual good D tackle for real.
I will say if there weren't the suspensions, David Irving was trending in that way. But when David Irving was healthy, he was out there playing, man, he wrecked some games. Like he was heading in a good direction. But like throughout that entire Marinelli time, and then even going into this Quinn time, like they just really haven't any like the dominance in the middle. And I just think they need a lot of help there. So that's on my radar for sure.
Okay, so D tackle, doubling up
D-tackle,
right there.
I'd be trying to bring back Jordan Lewis because I don't think you'll have to break the bank, but you can't disrespect him either. I'm drafting Ashton Genty at 12.
Okay.
And let me think. What else do they need? I got to make a move I got to find out. I got to get a Brandon Cooks type deal for another wide receiver. I need somebody more proven to put me in a position to where if Mingo or Tolbert or somebody else, let's say Turpin, show that they can do more, hey, great. Then I'll deal with that. That's a great problem to have. But I'm not leaving myself in a position to where I'm like, well, they have to be better this year. I need this guy to be a 2 and this guy to be the 3. No, I need to add somebody else into that mix. And so Cooper Kupp's interesting to me if he is healthy. Healthy. That's the one thing about when you're the GM, but you don't know what the medicals are. That's such a big on all that stuff. So, but somebody along those lines, like a veteran receiver that you're like, oh, this can be a 1,000-yard guy next season.
I don't want Diggsy. I don't want Stephon here. I'm out on that. that. Tyler Lockett, I'm out on that.
Yeah.
DK Metcalf is interesting though. I've seen that trade rumor floated a little bit. That's an interesting option.
I mean, in my mind, also my other move is that there's no way I'm letting Micah Parsons leave. So I'm getting a deal done with him in the next, month, where I don't know if the Cowboys will do that. But with that being said, I also know that I don't just have unlimited money to spend. So I'm kind of looking for a number 2 receiver that I might be like I said, like if Cooks was able to stay healthy, that type of guy where you give up like a 5th or 6th round pick. I just think Metcalf will be too expensive because I do still need those picks, like I can't be giving up 2nds and 3rds,
Man, you gotta do something, man. They have to do something, John. It's been rough.
Yeah.
It's been real. I know it's not fun for you to cover the team on seasons like this. You can't even
Yeah.
post an article without getting harassed.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
And you're just a messenger. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm like, I'll see the threads. It's like people
Yeah.
are like using that as a vent session. It's like,
Oh,
all right.
yeah. No, and then people also think that like some of us that cover the team have this like that we have this big influence on Jerry, like he gives a shit what we say. Like it's.
Do you think the
laughable.
players have that big of an influence? Like, because
No.
thank you.
No.
Thank you. Do you really think that the players lashing out in the media would force Jerry to do something different?
No, and then even the like Micah sitting down with Jerry at the I think they were at the Cotton Bowl. That I don't think that Jerry looks at stuff that way. Like it's kind of going back to the Luka trade. You know, a lot of the talk there was that, man, they really didn't talk to Jason Kidd and they really didn't talk to anybody else on the team. And Nico Harrison did this on his own or whatever. It's like, I really do believe that on a lot of these decisions, Jerry, like he talks to a bunch of people, but it's not like he feels like he has to get an agreement from somebody. He talks to them and gets their information, but he's the one making the pick. You know, it wasn't like if he didn't really want Brian Schottenheimer is not the coach, you know? And that's the thing about even those offseason moves. You can tell me the top 5 people in the organization under Jerry all saw that Super Bowl, have all seen this run, and are all like, we got to change up what we do in the offseason. We got to do this or whatever like that. And they each take turns over the next couple of months or next few weeks or whatever, and they're really on Jerry about it. Ultimately, he's going to be the one that if he wants to do it, he'll do it. And if he doesn't, then they're not. It's not like it's this big, consensus or whatever like that. It's ultimately going to come down if he thinks that it's a good idea to do that or not. So you got to find a way to talk yourself. You got to talk him into it, which is crazy to me because the Jerry Jones that at least I thought was Jerry Jones back in the 90s when I was younger before I moved here, that Jerry Jones I would think would be the guy that would be like, well, there's no salary cap on GMs.
Yeah,
I'm gonna money whip Howie Roseman.
Yeah,
I'm done. We're not going 30 years.
Could you imagine that?
We're not going 30 years. And anybody that wants to sit there and say like, well, he's not leaving the Eagles to go to the Cowboys. Yeah, offer him more money. What's he making right now? Let's say he makes $10 million a year, which I don't think he makes that, but let's say he made 10. Offer him 20. The Eagles will give him 20. Give him 30. Give him 40. Give him 50.
Jared don't have it like that anymore.
Right,
Jared don't have it like that
no more,
man.
Anymore. But I'm just saying, like, that is the type of moves that you would think that, to be honest with you, that's kind of like the way that the Los Angeles Dodgers do stuff. So when it comes to the team, you can't come up with excuses because there's a salary cap of players. You can't come up with excuses for coaches and GMs. But he's not going to do that.
Yeah, that's interesting. But like you said, John, we're kind of in the dark ages right now. Everything's kind of slow. We're kind of in the calm before the storm, before the combine gets kicked off. And we'll see some of you guys start firing off a lot of content. I want all of my audience. We are fans of Jon Machota over here. Jon Machota supports us. We got to support John. I want all of my audience to know exactly where to find all of your work throughout the offseason, whether it's Cowboys related or not. So, John, go ahead and let us know where we can find you at, man.
Yeah, mainly just to go to Twitter, X, at Jon Machota. So
man, we got to diversify your platforms, man. Because you said that on the collective, and I was like, this man, he need to monetize. He can monetize his platform so much more.
Well, like, what are you talking about, like with like YouTube or?
Yeah, like YouTube or.
I will say this. So
you haven't thought about that, John?
My whole thing about the YouTube thing is that it's always been in my mind. I've always talked about doing it, but I'm never going to do it until I can do it like on the level of where, like how you guys are doing it every single day. I don't like doing it like 2-3 times a day on my own. I don't think it's enough. Like, I feel like I would want to, if I'm going to do it, I want to do it every single day and have these constant updates. And right now with like the stuff I do at The Athletic, I just got a lot on my plate. And then also I don't really have a great work-life balance as it is. And then the other part of it is that the team has not been on that level for me to feel like I want to spend all that extra time. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like if they were winning more and there was like more interest in terms of like, let's say like how the Eagles are right now, I think I'd be more apt to do that. But there's just like stuff where I'm just like, I do this show, the Cowboys Collective with you guys. And then I do another podcast with the guys like that, my coworker at The Athletic, Saad Youssef, and then Kent Garrison and
what's the name of the podcast? Plug it, man. Plug it.
It's what's it called? I just forgot it. It's the One Star Cowboys podcast. We had to change the name, because it used to be under The Athletic, but then they said that we could just take it on our own after this past season. So we're doing it on our own now. So yeah, it's the One Star Cowboys podcast, and it's on all of the platforms that you would find any podcast at. But we probably do that 2 times a week, maybe 3 times during the season. But and then the other side of it is like the Instagram, like Facebook and all that stuff like that. I'll post some stuff on Instagram here and there, but like I'm just not really.
I don't do the Instagram deal a lot either. I try to stick to what's going to actually make it worth it. It got to be worth my time. It has to be worth my time. And so Instagram is more based off of like sponsors and stuff like that. YouTube,
yeah.
You should, Jon. You should.
Oh no, there's a lot.
Even if you could, like, it's just you have to figure out a way to kind of like integrate it with whatever you're doing already, to where you're not like adding more to your plate.
Yeah.
Even if it's just like you on the way to the Star, about to go to the interviews with the assistant coach, it's like an update before and afterwards. Like you do a quick update in your car or something, like before and afterwards, and kind of giving your to-the-minute impressions.
Yeah.
You're still just taking advantage of the same time you're going to be spending anyways, going to or from the event. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you just make that to content.
Well, let me ask you this one. Do you go back and like watch any of your stuff?
I have now, because I've been doing a damn good fucking job, and I've been laughing at it. So I do now. I didn't when I first started, because it was kind of cringy.
Dude, that's the reason I asked you, because I was like, I hate listening to myself. Like, just crop it and like post a video of my talking. I hate that stuff so much. I can't stand it.
Yeah. It's something that you have to grow,
because like they can handle it.
But you can honestly, when you're doing it yourself, though, it makes you better, because you're really looking at it from the viewpoint of a viewer, but you're even being more critical. So to me, it kind of lets me be like, that didn't land right, or okay, I gotta adjust my tone here while I'm saying this, or a little bit more inflection. Okay, maybe I do need to lower my volume a little bit. I did kind of peak a little bit right there. It's certain stuff that you catch when you're editing that kind of helps you improve from that standpoint. But we kind of got into a whole technical conversation. But I do think
it is fascinating, because it is such a growing thing that, like, believe me, you're not the only person to tell me this. Like, there's other people that cover the Cowboys, like
you got to.
Like Jeff Kavanaugh and like Mike Fisher. They do a lot of stuff on there. They've both told me too. They're like, man, you need to be on there. You need to be like posting a video every day and all that. I'm like, I know, but I don't know.
I'll telling you, man, just integrate it to whatever you normally do. I don't care if you're going out to go eat at your favorite lunch spot. You could do your news. You could do your breaking news right there. You could do your video talking about your breaking news. Send your tweet out at the same time you're uploading the video, and you link it all together, and boom. Like, you don't have to make it this whole big production. I'm serious. Like, you don't have to make this a whole big production, because you already have a platform built already to a degree. When you already just credit this ethos built. So you just have to get it out there, though. You need another platform, and we'll support you. You get it out there, we'll support you.
All right. Good to know.
We'll pump you, bro. We'll pump you. Seriously.
All right. If they're more active in this off season, I'll get one going.
Okay, y'all heard it here first, man.
Moves, I'll get one going.
Okay, y'all heard it here first. Breaking news from Jon Machota. We're gonna need Jon Machota on the map, though, man. Hey, appreciate you, Jon Machota, for spending some time with us, man. I know you're a busy man. I know this is time where I kind of caught you at the right time, because things are slowing down a little bit. But much blessings to you, brother. And I'll see you probably Wednesday on the Collective, I guess. I'll see you Wednesday, man.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, sir.
Calling me, texting me, paging me, asking me, am I still them boys? Y'all usually check on me. Listen. I'm still them boys. Hey! Woo! Oh, shut up, my boy. Hey! I'm still them boys.